single-heartedly chanting the Buddha's name can solve others' resentment and enmity. It happened in April, 1957. In downtown Taichung, a large truck rushed into a theater to dodge a bicycle. Two big pillars in the corridor fell off, causing a car accident that killed and injured 6 people in total. One of the fatality was an old lady in her 60s who was seriously injured and immediately died at the scene. She just came here from Taipei the day before because she quarreled with her son and went to her daughter's house in Taichung. Her daughter was very filial to the mother and persuaded her not to go back, and her son-in-law also welcomed her to live in Taichung for a long term. That day after the old lady bathed herself and also bathed her youngest granddaughter around 5 p.m., she piggybacked her young granddaughter and went out for a casual walk. Just under the corridor to the theater, the poor lady bore the brunt and was directly hit by the truck and perished on the scene. Fortunately, her granddaughter on her back was unhurt. Several days later, they held the farewell ceremony at the daughter's house and were ready for cremating after that. They also invited several Taoist priests to liberate the dead. That day the old lady's son rushed over from Taipei, wearing him cloak and white hat, holding a furnace in his left hand and a banner in his right hand. He followed the Taoist priest's call, going in and out acting as a filial son. While the bustling ceremonial service was going, suddenly the filial man, holding the furnace and flag with one foot inside the door and the other foot outside the door, stood stiff and still, his eyes hung high, his mouth uttered hulu hulu. With a straight face, his face became black black man. At that time, our lotus friend, laywoman Yu Chen, lived next door to his house. That night, Yura was sitting on the chair near the door and was chanting Buddha with a rosary in her hand. Suddenly, she heard a yell from the next door, and she didn't know what happened. The gongs and drums were still ringing just now. Why did it immediately turn into a commotion? Yura was driven by curiosity and went outside to take a look. She took the Buddha beads in her hand and chanted the Buddha's name in her mouth. When looking at the appearance of the filial man, Yura couldn't help but shouted Nano Amitabha Buddha loudly. This loud chanting of Buddha continued for 2 minutes. Sister Yura recalled and said afterwards, "To be honest, when I was desperately chanting Buddhism aloud, I was really scared and couldn't help but chant it, not to intentionally save that man. But it was incredible. The filial man stood there, listening to the sound of the Buddha's name, the black on his face gradually faded, he could move his hands and feet again, his eyes were no longer hanging, and he soon returned to the original state, holding the furnace in his left hand and the banner in his right hand." And then again with the Taoist priests going in and out, the ceremony went smoothly. On the next day, before the filial man invited his deceased mother's spirit tablet and bone ashes back to Taipei, he came to thank Sister Yura. He said, "Yesterday it was so good that you chanted Amitabha to me, otherwise it would be unthinkable. I don't know that Buddha chanting is so good." Sister Yura took the opportunity to persuade him. "After you go back, you have to chant it every day, so that you can resolve the grievances with your mother, you can also avoid calamities, and your future is bright." The filial man agreed and appreciated her, then left. One day later, Yura told me about the haunting yesterday from the beginning to the end. She said, "Last night, I was too afraid to enter the house afterwards and sat alone on the chair at the door, chanting Buddha until 11 o'clock. The more I think about it, the stranger it becomes. Even if I catch the flu, it's impossible to get better in just 2 minutes. It is inevitable that I have to ask for injections from doctors and take medicine to be recovered." Yura is very smart. She guessed that it might be caused by the mother of the filial son. She quarreled with her son, then came to Taichung and came across this fatal accident. She was very angry that his son quarreled with her, her resentment would not disappear. So when the priests called the soul, she came to settle accounts with her son, and the resentful soul forked her son's neck and almost strangled him to death. It happened that laywoman Yor came and chanted Namo Amitabha Buddha aloud. Surprisingly, the great compassion and supernatural power of the characters of this name was so excellent, especially when she was scared and desperate to chant the Buddha with all her heart, that occurred such a big effect. At the same time, the ghost heard the holy name, and her grievances full of her mind was dispelled, so she let go. Think about it, everyone, when I persuade people to learn Buddhism and chant Buddha, some will say, I don't have money to give, so I dare not to believe in Buddhism. How do such people get blessed? Look at Sister Yor, she just chanted a few Buddha names and did not spend a penny, but she made a great charity. Saving a life exceeds building a 7-level pagoda. Sister Yor has good temperament and good conduct, and she was ever elected as the model mother in Taichung City.